What's up on a Thursday night? Yes, we are back. Missed you last week, but of course we had Turkey Day. Hope your Thanksgiving was fantastic. First question every Thursday night as we do crafts and kickoffs. You know the deal. What are you drinking? I'll let you know what I'm drinking tonight. I'm going pumpkin. Tonight. Berkeley Beer Company, pumpkin ale, which is absolutely unbelievable. It's a great beer. I don't know what the ABV is because it's not listed on the can. So Berkeley, work on that. But Berkeley Beer Company, pumpkin ale is what I'm rocking with. Absolutely fantastic. Let me know what you're drinking tonight as we talk about the NFL. Maryland jumps in the Christmas spirit, old Fezziwig from Guess Who? Yes, Sam Adams. I knew it, Maryland, that you would be drinking Sam Adams tonight. Here is that pumpkin beer that I'm having. Cheers to all of you. Have a drink. Enjoy this Thursday. Oh, it's so good. All right. Let's start with story number 5. I have to start with Azeez Al-Shaair and the hit that a lot of people have been talking about since Sunday, the hit on Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence, he slides. Was it a late slide? Maybe. Was it a reckless slide? I don't think so. But Al-Shaair dives towards Lawrence and hits him. Now, I think, looking back at that hit, and I watched it a couple of times, I do think there was extra to that hit. And I do think that Al-Shaair should have been suspended, which he was. And I'll tell you why. Number one, he leads with his forearm. If you lead with your forearm, you're just asking for danger. You're just asking for trouble. So Al-Shaair leads with his forearm first and foremost, which is a dangerous play. I did think that Al-Shaair was late to the party, so to speak, when he was diving towards Lawrence. Lawrence was already took us to the field, and Al-Shaair dives forearm first later than I think he wanted to. And a hit like that is totally avoidable. You don't have to hit him with your forearm. You don't have to dive head first towards him, right? As soon as you see Lawrence going down, you could just tap him on the helmet, tap him on the shoulder. So I did think it was a little bit too much from Al-Shaair. Had absolutely no problem with a suspension. With that said, I was surprised that it was a 3-game suspension. Now, before the appeal process happened, I was going to come onto this podcast. I was going to have my sip of pumpkin beer. And I was going to say to all of you, well, the NFL suspended Al-Shaair for 3 games because he's going to have to go through the appeal. They usually hit you heavier than they want to because you'll go through the appeal process, and the NFL will end up trimming a game off of the suspension. So I was surprised. I was very surprised yesterday when we found out that the suspension is going to be upheld. And Al-Shaair got 3 games for the suspension. Now, do I think that's a little bit too much? I do. I would have been much more comfortable with a 2-game suspension. A 3-game suspension is a little bit heavy in my mind. And we all agree that it's very tough for defensive football players to always be able to make a play without hurting a quarterback or getting a flag or somebody looking at them a little bit differently. Quarterbacks, of course, they play games. They know the rules. You know, they'll kind of tiptoe by the sideline and hold the football out as they're going out of bounds. They'll slide. Sometimes they'll slide a little bit late. So there are things that the NFL could address. The problem is it's all subjective, and the rule book is already way too thick in the NFL. So there are issues that I don't think are going to go away easily in the league because of that rule book and because they're trying to protect quarterbacks. But I thought Al-Shaair, he deserved a suspension. 3 games, I think, was a little bit much, but you know, a game here or there, not the end of the world. As far as people attacking Al-Shaair, because I know Nick Caserio came out and he sounded like a hardo talking about, people going after Al-Shaair. What we can't do is give credit or too much credit to nameless, faceless trolls and social media people, okay? These people want to get a rise out of Al-Shaair. If they're attacking him personally, it's ridiculous. I don't think it was personal whatsoever. And we should not be shining a light on people who go to the bottom rung of the ladder and go after somebody like Al-Shaair. He's going to pay. He's going to pay through the fine and the suspension, and then we move forward. That's what happens. I'm going to move forward to story number 4. But before I do, let me see what people are drinking here for a minute. Rick jumps in, B5005, drowning my Patriot sorrows to a Bassell Brothers Substance Ale. I've never had that. I'd love more information on the Substance Ale if you could give it to me, Rick. But I appreciate your contribution to the show. 618 Racing, Sam Adams Jacko. Sam Adams Jacko remains one of my favorite pumpkin beers, pumpkin ales that is out on the market. When I did the show from Virginia Beach, I had a Jacko that night back in October, about the middle of October. Love that beer. It's a really, really, really good beer. Chris Chapman, he goes simple, right? Just keeping it simple. Says, hey, all. He's rocking a Bud Light. So Chris is having a Bud Light tonight. So hopefully you enjoy that. Our friend Terry stopping by the party, as always, with the Diet Pepsi. Nothing wrong with that, Terry. Hope you're enjoying your night. Ryan Lee joins us and says, evening all, drinking Alaskan Nordic cider. I think you've had that before. You must really like that beer. Speaking of cider, Anonymous jumps in. He got out of work early. Nice. Congratulations for getting out of work early on a Thursday night, Anonymous. And Anonymous is having a hard cider. So enjoy that hard cider as I enjoy this Berkeley Beer Company pumpkin ale. Let's get to story number 4. I think all of us watched what happened on Thanksgiving, right? The Chicago Bears. Man, oh man. 1 week ago, I was sitting at my in-laws. I'm in the living room. I'm watching the Chicago-Detroit game. I can't believe that Chicago has a chance in this game because it looked like they were going to get steamrolled, and we all saw how it ended. Absolutely outrageous. Matt Eberflus's clock management was as bad as it could possibly be. 36 seconds left. You know the deal. Caleb Williams, he takes a sack, and what Eberflus should have done is call a timeout right there on the spot. Williams gets sacked, call a timeout, bring your rookie quarterback and offense to the sidelines, go over the next couple of plays and how you want to execute that to try to kick the field goal. But instead, we know what happened. Like 30 seconds, 25 to 30 seconds goes off the clock. Everybody, I'm watching it. I'm screaming at the TV, call a timeout, call a timeout. Caleb Williams is completely clueless. He's flapping his arms at the line of scrimmage like a freaking bird. And so nobody really knows why it's happening or what's happening other than, holy crap, what we are witnessing is a circus. And we all knew. I felt it. I think you felt it. Eberflus is going to get fired. And I did the morning show on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston on Black Friday morning, and we had the over-under on when Eberflus would be let go by Chicago. Our time was 10 a.m. Eastern. We should have went with the over because he did get canned. It took a little bit longer than a lot of people thought, but Eberflus fired by Chicago. I think he was going to be fired anyway by the end of the year. It didn't really matter that this happened. It just expedited the process because everybody watching could not believe the brain fart from that coaching staff. It was almost unbelievable. Now you move forward if you're the Bears. And this Chicago job is sexy. Yeah, it is mighty sexy, my friends, this Chicago job. When you think about Caleb Williams, you think about the talent on this team, there's no doubt Chicago has talent. And if you are a coach trying to make that next step, you got to be looking at Chicago as one of those teams that you wouldn't mind going to coach because you've got the young, electric, talented quarterback, and he has those weapons. You've got some good pieces on defense. This Chicago team, when you look at it on paper, it should be battling for a playoff spot. I mean, they've lost 2 or 3 games this year that they had no right losing. They should never have lost those games. So you look at this job in Chicago, and I think it's a pretty attractive job. My first question is, the Bears have said Ryan Poles, the GM, is actually going to have the authority to run this head coach search, which is fascinating to me because Ryan Poles, I don't think he's done a great job. He's done a good job as far as some of the talent that he's brought in. But here's the thing. Ryan Poles, to me, he should be in danger of losing his job. So if you're going to have Poles run this head coach search and he's going to be the person who picks the coach, which is what we've been told. What's fascinating about that is what happens if Chicago doesn't get off to a great start next year? What happens if Chicago doesn't get to the playoffs next year, doesn't meet expectations? Ryan Poles is on the firing squad there. He's in the firing line. And so if Ryan Poles gets fired next year, now you just allowed the guy who got fired to hire your head coach. Usually, like if I'm Chicago, I'm thinking let's just go clean slate. Let's start from the beginning, right? In the front office. Let's go pick a GM. That GM picks his head coach, and then they can move forward together. If Chicago struggles next year, Ryan Poles could get fired. And now what you have is Chicago brings in a new GM, and now that GM didn't pick the head coach. And you're constantly imbalanced. And that's what's been happening in Chicago. They have this thing where, they bring in a rookie quarterback, but they don't reset at the coaching spot. And so you have a coach who's on his last legs working with a rookie quarterback like you had with Eberflus, and now Eberflus is gone, which means Caleb Williams is going to have to deal with a new coaching staff most likely. And so I just like the idea of resetting things. Say we're going to get a GM, that GM's going to pick the next head coach, and hopefully that's the nucleus of this franchise for the next 5 to 10 years, along with Caleb Williams. Because if Poles doesn't work out and you've got to say goodbye to him, now you've got the new GM coming in with the last GM's guy at head coach, which usually is a recipe for disaster. Now, if I'm Chicago, I'm going offense with my head coach. It just makes sense. Caleb Williams, by the way, he's had not one, not two, but three. He's had 3 offensive coordinators in 3 freaking months. 3 coordinators in 3 months for Caleb Williams. And now he's looking at a new head coach coming in eventually. So that's not how you want to start somebody's career at that position. There have been rumors about Cliff Kingsbury. I would not be excited about Cliff Kingsbury if I was a Bears fan. Cliff Kingsbury, his history, he usually starts to fade in the second half. I know Washington had a great week last weekend offensively, but they were also playing the Tennessee Titans. So when you look at Kingsbury's track record, when he was at Arizona, he would usually fade. His offense would fade as the year went on. So I'm not super pumped and jacked if I'm Chicago about Kingsbury. His Arizona resume wasn't fantastic. Of course, you got to bring up Ben Johnson, Detroit's offensive coordinator. I think that's the name that a lot of people will talk about, and it makes sense. Number one, if you do hire Ben Johnson, you're taking him from Detroit, a divisional rival, right? You get him from Detroit. He stays in the NFC North. He stays in the same, general vicinity, but you take away the play caller from one of your rivals. You take away the offensive play caller from the team that many would argue, and I would agree with this, if healthy, best team in football. So you take that element away from a team that is in your division. Now, I think you got to surround Ben Johnson with some experience because he'll be a first-time head coach, and you see how the rest of his coaching staff goes. But this is critical for Chicago, obviously, right? Captain Obvious just walked into the room. He's got a pumpkin ale in his right hand. He's saluting you with a thumbs up. Like, Chicago, you got to match wits. The NFC North is ridiculously tough. Minnesota, playoff team. Detroit, again, if healthy, best team in the league. And I know Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, but I think Detroit this year has been the better team. Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love, another team that's going to make the playoffs. So you're in the NFC North. You can't mess around. You can't swing and miss. All right, I'll get to story number 3 in a couple of minutes. First, what are you drinking? I've got the Berkeley Beer Company Pumpkin Ale. This is a kick-ass beer can, too. Check that out. Isn't that a cool design? Cool design. Berkeley Beer Company Pumpkin Ale. Got a pint. I don't know the ABV. They didn't put it on the can, so we're just going to let it fly. Welcome to the party. My friend Amy jumps in, says she's late. It's okay. Look, it's a party. We're open. Doors open. You just walk on in. You hang out with us. I'm at the Stone Path Brewery. You're at the brewery. Well, say hello to people at the Stone Path Brewery drinking Bent Water Blackberry Lemon Seltzer. That's a lot. Bent water, blackberry, lemon seltzer. Okay. Well, you got to take me to Stone Path soon, Amy, and tell everybody I said hello at Stone Path. Let me see if I could find others. Charlie says, sup. No booze tonight. Plant-based evening for me. Plant-based. All right. Hey, look, I don't judge. Brandon says he had to mute the Predators game to listen to me. Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that, my friend. Kevin jumps in from the top rope, drinking 1,800 to get ready for free agency. Free agency, huh? Chris, $10 super chat. Thank you. Captain Obvious. Yes. Enjoy the bye week. Thank you. I'm going to Seinfeld on Saturday night with the wife. Can't wait. I don't know if any of you seen Seinfeld live? It's a bucket list thing for me. I love the show Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld. I've watched a bunch of his stand-up. I'm going to go check him out at Foxwoods in Connecticut on Saturday night with Kelly. Cannot wait. Should line up perfectly. College football, SEC championship game, 4 o'clock right before the show. Sit at the bar, drink some beers, go into the show. After the show, come out, watch more college football. The UFC has a pay-per-view on Saturday night. Marilyn says she loves Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. How's he look so young? Can't wait. Can't wait to go see Jerry. All right. Want to remind you, of course, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. There's been some weird stuff happening with YouTube and the views for this show. I don't need to go deep into it. People on my Patreon got to hear that story today. But don't forget to help us out. You can do it a few ways. You can give us that thumbs up, the likes, more eyeballs. You're watching YouTube, give us that like. If you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, we also like having support from there as well. So if you want to give us that like over there, but don't forget to give us that thumbs up on YouTube. Helps us beat that algorithm. Throw a comment in about Jerry Seinfeld like Terry did. Terry said she saw him live years ago at the Lowell Auditorium, and that it was a super fun show. Yeah, I can't wait for it. So don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to comment. How do you feel about the Trevor Lawrence deal, the hit by Al-Shaair? Do you think 3 games was necessary? Do you think it was the right call by the league to have that suspension upheld? So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to hit 5,500 subscribers on this channel by the new year. It is a huge challenge. I'm not overly confident we'll hit, but we can hit with your help. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Rick saw Seinfeld last year at Foxwoods. He was funny. Oh, got your parents' tickets for Saturday. You'll be there gambling. Well, maybe we'll run into each other. Rick, if you see me, if you see this face, say hello. Say hello. I'll buy you a drink. Greg says, sounds like a super good show. Love Foxwoods. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But Rick, seriously, if you see me, if you happen to see me, my man, say hello. Let me know that you're Rick B5005. People around you might think it's really weird, but be like, hey, man, I'm Rick. I'm Rick from the party on Thursday night. If you want to go a little cryptic, and I'll buy you a drink. Let's see. Adam jumps in. Shout out Patriots and you, Nick Hopkinton, Massachusetts native here. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you. All right, let's get to story number 3 as you like, comment, and subscribe. The 49ers, they look dunsy. They do. They look done. They're 5-7. They looked very uncomfortable versus Buffalo. They did not look like they were having a good time in that Buffalo snow last weekend. Run CMC is done with the PCL. He's out for the rest of the year. Jordan Mason, their backup running back, who did a tremendous job while CMC was out. He's hurt. Looks like he's done for the year. And I really want to focus on the future for San Francisco, not necessarily the present, but the future, because Brock Purdy has 1 year left on his contract. And if you're the 49ers, I want you to tell me, okay? You're John Lynch. You're Kyle Shanahan. You have the say. If you're San Francisco, do you sign Brock Purdy to an extension this offseason, or do you wait it out? He's got 1 year left on the deal. You could give him a big extension this offseason, or do you let this thing play out? My own thought, I would play it out. You have all the leverage as the 49ers. Play that puppy out. You don't feel like you have to get a deal done with Brock Purdy right now in this instance. So I would play it out. So that's one question. The other question is McCaffrey. How can you possibly depend on Christian McCaffrey? If I'm San Francisco, I don't feel great about McCaffrey's future. I mean, he's had a ton of touches in his career. He especially has had a crazy amount of touches since he was traded to the 49ers. So the usage is high. He has wear and tear. He has had multiple injuries in the past. He started this year with that Achilles issue. And usually running backs, as they get older, unless you're Derrick Henry, who seems to be superhuman, you wear down and you're not the same guy. So if I'm the 49ers, I'm concerned about McCaffrey's, long-term health. I'm concerned about him being the same guy in 2025. And, how much does that change your team if Jordan Mason is the guy? I like Mason. I liked Mason before this year. I worked out in Sacramento. I watched Mason, his rookie year, saw him play a lot, especially during the preseason and stuff. But I like Jordan Mason, but how much does he change your team? Because McCaffrey is such an unbelievable weapon. You can use him in the pass game. You can do all sorts of different things with Christian McCaffrey. So I would not be super confident or optimistic about McCaffrey's future. I think the Niners are fine at wide receiver as long as Ricky Pearsall hits. If Pearsall hits, I think you're good because you would have Brandon Ayuk, Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings. You might ask, Nick, what about Deebo Samuel? If I'm San Francisco, I'm trying to trade Deebo this offseason. I think Deebo has seen his best football. I think it's time. It's time. And I don't think they're going to cut him because the dead cap money, it doesn't work out. They have an out in the contract, but tens of millions of dollars would be dead cap money from cutting Deebo. I would try hard to trade Deebo to a team that is open to the idea of extending him, giving him like a 2-year deal on much shorter money. I would try to get Deebo out of there. I'd be focused with Ayuk coming back from the ACL, Ricky Pearsall, and Jennings. That, to me, those are your 3 receivers heading to the future. And I would move on from Deebo if I could. If it was a 5th-round pick, 6, I would move Deebo Samuel. Trent Williams is another interesting name. He's got 2 years left on his contract. By the way, had a tragic personal loss, brutal loss of a baby recently. So just absolutely terrible, terrible story for Trent Williams. He's 37 years old next season. He is still a really, really good left tackle. But do you feel like Trent Williams has a lot of football left? I don't know. How about George Kittle? George Kittle has taken a lot of hits and plays a very physical brand of football. He ain't getting any younger. Let me look up George Kittle's age. I mean, I'm guessing he's got to be around 30? He's 31. Yeah, so he turned 31 in October. So you've got Kittle, who is in his 30s now. This team is aging, and you look at it and you wonder, has that window closed? I'm not going to write them off completely. I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going anywhere. He signed a multi-year deal in 2023, and I think, he'll just chalk this season up to injuries. But San Francisco is going to be a very interesting, compelling team to watch during this offseason. All right, story number 2. Should the Falcons bench Kirk Cousins? Should they bench Kirk Cousins? First year of that big contract. What do you think? Do you say goodbye to Kirk? Atlanta, they're 6-6. Tampa Bay, 6-6. The NFC South is not good. The Falcons, on paper, they should be running away with this division. The fact that they are 6-6 and Tampa's 6-6, and Tampa lost Chris Godwin for the year. They lost Mike Evans for a number of weeks, right? But they're still sitting there at 6-6 with the Falcons. And Cousins last week was a disaster against the Chargers. He threw not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions. And that's coming off a bye. Coming off a bye week, Cousins threw 4 picks last weekend. Derwin James said this about Cousins last weekend after beating him. Said this to Pro Football Talk. Quote, he's a veteran quarterback, giving him different looks. We did a great job lining up all day long. I feel like we made it tough on him. The different looks included showing all of our pressure, dropping back, bringing pressure, showing them zones, then bring pressure, just different looks, making them uncomfortable, unquote. Mark Ramondi at ESPN wrote about the Falcons sinking. Last weekend was the Falcons' third straight loss. Again, this team is talented. And in that division, they shouldn't have many issues. Should not have many issues whatsoever. So, third straight loss. Cousins has not thrown a touchdown in 3 consecutive games. He's gone 3 games in a row without throwing a touchdown. He had never had back-to-back games without throwing a touchdown pass since becoming a full-time starter in 2015. If you look at the numbers, Cousins is first in the league in interceptions. He's 18th in passer rating. He's 20th in QBR. He is 16th in EPA and EPA per dropback. And it begs the question, do you bench Kirk Cousins and go to Michael Penix? The Falcons drafted Penix 8th overall in the draft. I thought it was crazy. You gave Kirk Cousins like $100 million guaranteed, and then you turned around a month and a half later and you drafted a guy at the same position at number 8 overall. It was nuts. I still think they should have drafted a pass rusher, like Dallas Turner. Instead, they traded for Matthew Judon, and Judon looks cooked. He looks washed. So here's what Ramondi at ESPN wrote about the Michael Penix option. Atlanta head coach Raheem Morris said he had no thought of putting Penix in Sunday, and Cousins will remain the starter moving forward. Morris said Cousins, quote, has carried us, unquote. Jim Trotter of The Athletic says Atlanta should consider making the change. He wrote, Cousins is in the worst funk of his 10 seasons as a full-time starter. His 4 interceptions Sunday tied his career high. 3 of them occurred in the final 17 minutes. 3 picks in the final 17 minutes. Woof. 1 returned 61 yards for a pick 6. Woof. And another killing a goal-to-go opportunity. Tragic. Trotter writes, it has been said that once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, and 3 times is a pattern. What we're seeing from Cousins in recent weeks is a noticeable pattern that, at the very least, warrants situational playing time for Penix, who has earned glowing reviews behind the scenes for his work in practice. Okay, situational playing time, thanks, but no thanks. You can't play that game. If you're Atlanta, you decide to bench Kirk Cousins and play Michael Penix, Penix is your guy going forward. You drafted him 8th. You just benched a veteran. You don't play with the situational playing time, right? You don't do that. What are you going to do? You're going to throw Penix in there for a series? That's outrageous. It's outrageous. If you're going to bench him, you bench him. No half measures. You don't bench him, throw Michael Penix in for a series, then take Penix out. That's not fair to the rookie quarterback. It's not fair to Kirk Cousins. If you make the decision to bench the guy, then you bench the guy. It's simple. So I disagree with Trotter in this situational playing time thing. Doesn't make any sense to me. It's not like Michael Penix is a dual threat quarterback like Justin Fields in Pittsburgh, and you have Russell Wilson out there for most of the time, but then you sprinkle in Justin Fields because you can use his legs. Penix is not that kind of guy. Like, Penix doesn't do it. Like, he's not going to run. He's not a super athlete, even though his combine would tell you he's very athletic. He's much more athletic than I anticipated when you look at his, 40 dash and all that stuff. But he's not a running quarterback. He's not comfortable running. You're not going to run a read option with Michael Penix. So he's a pocket guy. You got a pocket guy in there now. If you take the pocket guy out for another pocket guy, you keep the pocket guy in. You don't mess around and play juggling quarterbacks on the sidelines. That's outrageous. It'd be a mess. So take the situational playing time idea and fire it directly into the sun. You make the move, it's the move. Now, lately, there's no denying that Kirk Cousins has been bad. But I'm not pulling the trigger just yet. I would not bench him just yet. You gave him $100 million guaranteed. Giving somebody $100 million guaranteed, you've got to make sure that he's toast. Like, you can't look at this and say he's had a bad couple of weeks, right? You look at Cousins and say, all right, he had 2 or 3 bad weeks. You gave him $100 million guaranteed. You're quitting on him after a couple of bad weeks? I would not go there yet. I would keep him in. I think it would be a rush to judgment to let Cousins, walk his way to the bench. I just don't see it. If I'm Atlanta, I'm giving him at least another chance this weekend, and he's going to get another chance this weekend. And I think that's the right call because, again, $100 million guaranteed. You thought this guy back 9 months ago, you thought this guy was good enough to give $100 million guaranteed. And Jay and AVL, let me try to pull you up here, Jay. Little mouse problem happened here. His plant foot is shot. Yeah, I don't think he's the same guy, and he certainly doesn't look comfortable. But I need to know, Jay, I need to know that he's not the same guy. I need to know that he's cooked and there's no going back before I bench him. That's my opinion. If I'm the Falcons, that's how I'm handling it. I'm not benching him after 2 or 3 bad weeks, because 2 or 3 bad weeks in a full season doesn't mean much. You gave this dude $100 million guaranteed for a number of years. If you bench him now, again, there's no going back, because you're not going to bench him and put somebody in there as a backup quarterback that people aren't excited about. As soon as you move Penix into a game, the ATL is going to be Penix, right? Like, that's it. You put Penix in a game, the ATL is getting Michael Penix jerseys. They're throwing them on. Top 10 pick this past draft. They're buying all the stock. They're buying all the Michael Penix stock. So, like, once you do it, it's done, because you don't have some kind of Hammenegger as your backup quarterback. You got a dude who you used the 8th pick on. So once you make that move, you make that move. So it's not just you're benching Cousins now. No, you're benching Cousins forever. As once you put Penix on, once you put Cousins on the bench, his future in Atlanta is done. It's over, which is fine. But once you make that decision, you make that decision. And, you know, there has been some good about Cousins this year. He's 6th in the NFL in completion percentage over expected. He's just outside the top 10 in touchdowns. So it's not like he's been a complete waste. As a matter of fact, you know, you can focus on the last 3 weeks, and I get it. Recency bias, what we just saw. But earlier in the season, Cousins was playing well. He was one of the league's hottest quarterbacks just a month ago. Trotter himself wrote this. Cousins, he threw 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys. He threw 4 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was the first time this season with multiple scoring passes in consecutive weeks, not to mention consecutive games without a turnover. So literally, you know, just 3 or 4 weeks ago, Cousins was playing well. So I would be a little bit more patient. I'm not telling you that you ride him out the rest of this year, but I would be a little bit more patient, knowing that once I make that move is done. Penix is now the guy. Because it could be a little bit of a speed bump for Cousins. It's a first-time offensive coordinator down there in Atlanta as well. I will say, though, this week, good luck. Good luck, Kirk. Because the Falcons are going to Minnesota this weekend. And that's a tough assignment. Cousins goes back to Minnesota. Obviously, he just left Minnesota. They have a book on him. They know what he likes. They know what he hates. They know what he loves. So he's got to go back to Minnesota, play one of the better teams in the NFC. He's got to play against the Brian Flores defense. So good luck to Kirk Cousins. But I do think they're making the right move. And maybe, just maybe, they don't want to play Penix because it's the Minnesota matchup. And they don't want Penix's first start to be against Brian Flores. All right, I'll get to story number 1 in a minute. But, of course, my question, what are you drinking? This Thursday night, week 14, I'm drinking a Berkeley Beer Company pumpkin ale. It's a badass design, isn't it? Look at that design. Isn't that cool? Super cool design. So let me know what you're drinking. Throw a comment in. Of course, those likes, those comments, those subscriptions always help us. Here we go. Let's get to story number 1. I ask you this question, and I want you to throw the answer into the comment section. Do you think Saquon Barkley should be the MVP of the NFL this year? Do you think Barkley should be the MVP? He's been awesome. He's been awesome. Last week against Baltimore, 23 carries, a $107 on the ground, a touchdown. When you look at what he's done this year, he's played 12 games. He has 1,499 yards. He's 1 yard shy from 1,500 yards rushing, and he has 5 more games left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got 5 games left. He's been tremendous. Leads the league with that 1,499 number. He's tied for third in the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 11. He's first in the NFL yards per carry. Saquon Barkley is averaging 6.1 yards per carry. Outrageous. He's number one in rushing yards over expected. He's number one in rushing yards over expected per game. He is fifth. He's fifth in the NFL in expected points added. I mean, Saquon Barkley has been just outright bananas. Outright bananas in Philly. He's been unbelievable. And if you want to throw his receiving in there, you can throw his receiving in there. He's not 2018 Saquon Barkley who caught 91 passes, but he's also got, 29 catches for 2 touchdowns. But on the ground, he's been nuts. Nuts. But I don't think he's the MVP. He's been great. He's been great. But I don't think he's the MVP. What do you think Buffalo and or Baltimore would look like if you took Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson off those teams and replaced those quarterbacks with average quarterbacks? What do you think those teams look like? I do not think either of those teams are close to what they are right now without those quarterbacks. That's a huge piece of this to me. I also think we get wrapped up in the offense because it's offense. We enjoy points being scored. We play fantasy football. We're betting the overs, right? Who bets an under? Bet the over. We got to look at the Philly defense. The Philadelphia Eagles defense is one of the most underrated parts of the NFL this season when you look at any team in the league. John Marks, my buddy in Philly, he posted this earlier this week, okay? Since week six, Philly's defense has been dominant. They are first in points allowed. They're allowing only 13.5 points a game. They're first in total defense. They're first in yards per play allowed. They're first in passing defense. They're first in yards per pass allowed. They're first in 3 and outs. First. 6 different categories. This Eagles defense is number 1 in the entire league since week 6. This defense is humming. So, great season. I love myself some Saquon Barkley, and we should celebrate the year that he's had. Right? But I think if you took the league average running back and put him on Philly, Philly could still be successful at a relatively high level because of who else they have, right? And especially with that defense. So it's not to say that Barkley's not been great. He's been terrific. But I still lean towards Josh Allen versus Barkley when we talk MVP. Terry Grant coming in. Oh, my goodness. Absolutely unbelievable generosity from our friend Terry Grant. 2-time super chat since no podcast tomorrow. That's right, no Patriots podcast tomorrow. My lovely little room here, my lovely little nook, which you can't see because I've got the fancy pants green screen. Not really fancy pants, but you get it. Unavailable tomorrow. So no live podcast tomorrow for Patriots fans. I'm sorry, I apologize. But $100 super chat. Thank you, Terry. Much appreciated. Everybody have a drink for Terry as she drinks her Diet Pepsi. She is a supporter of all the programs I do, Patreon member. Very, very important to the success of this show. $100, unbelievable. Just again, bananas generosity. I'm humbled by it. Thank you. And bon voyage to Marilyn on her holiday trip. Yes, Marilyn is leaving us. She is a consistent member of the party as well. And I think she was a one-time Patreon member. She might have left me. but she was a one-time Patreon member. She's going diving during the holiday season. So thank you, Terry. And I agree. I'm with Terry on this. Bon voyage to Maryland. Hopefully you have a safe trip. Things go well. Do me a favor. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Hold on one second. I left Patreon. I can't figure it out. Terry, help Maryland. Terry, help Maryland figure out Patreon. But then she said she'd rather do super chats, which I get. It's all good, Maryland. It's all good. You support the show. You watch the show. Honestly, that's that means a lot to me. That means a lot to me. Everybody who supports this program, the other podcast that I do for the Patriot stuff on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, everybody who likes this channel and likes this video and comments on these videos and subscribes to the channel, every single one of you, I can't overstate this. I do not have a full-time job. I work part-time, radio, sparingly now. And so this is important to me. And so everybody who supports this in any way that they do, means the world to me. So like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you. Cheers, Slancha, Berkeley Beer Company, Pumpkin Ale. Absolutely fantastic. All right, we'll wrap it up now. Everybody have a great weekend. I'll be at Seinfeld on Saturday night, Foxwoods. If you see me, say hello. We'll have a drink. Until next Thursday for this podcast, I am Nick Cattles, Crafts and Kickoffs. I appreciate every single one of you. Have a truly great Week 14.